deal that the Obama administration has on the table is a bad, bad deal. Even if Iran accepts it, they would be permitted to continue to develop ICBMs and other kind of rockets that could reach Europe and the United States. Are ready to have rockets that can reach Israel.
A very stark warning from Alan Dershowitz earlier this month on our program as we welcome you back to Hour 2 of America's Forum for this Tuesday with Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth. Miranda, it looks like Iran and the U.S. are getting closer to this deal.
Yeah, and there's a deal on the table that would clamp down on Iran's nuclear plan for 10 years, but the restrictions would likely be eased as time goes on, making it easier for Iran to develop nuclear arms.
Joining us now with more on this developing story, Danny Ayalon, the former Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel, and he also served as Israeli ambassador to the United States. He joins us via phone from New York, and Skyping in from Newsmax LA, Larry Elder, who will be here with us for the entire hour. Danny, your assessment of this, quote, phased-in deal. Is President Obama just kind of kicking this nuclear can down the road?
Well, J.D., good morning. I'm afraid that the short answer is yes, because this deal is a real bad deal, because Iran retains its capabilities. It's becoming, again, a legitimate member of the international community, which strengthens the Ayatollah's hold on the Iranian society and, of course, elevates their status in the region. They can continue to support, as they do, heavily all the most dangerous terror organizations in the world, especially the Hezbollah, the Syrian regime, and Assad, and Hamas, and others. And the most, I think, dangerous thing is that this will actually redefine the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The Non-Proliferation Treaty forbade the countries to become militarily nuclear. Here, with this new deal where Iran gets this privileges, why wouldn't Venezuela want the same privileges, and Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, and other countries? So I think that will become a very, very chaotic and dangerous world to manage. So this is, I think, what we should all concentrate on, is what the implications will be, not just for Israel or the Saudi Arabians or the Europeans. What will be the implications to Americans here?
My concern is, even if this is a legitimate deal, and I doubt that, what happens after 10 years? How do you know they're not going to cheat? And I've been hearing that the lead negotiator on the Iranian side has literally been yelling at John Kerry and the other members of the U.S. delegation. What is that all about?
Well, that shows you really the arrogance of the Iranians, as that they feel that the interlocutors on the international community, led by the United States, are not strong enough. You see, the whole construction of these negotiations was wrong, because the P5+1, the most powerful powers in the world, against one country, Iran, which is a very, very weak country, very vulnerable economically, especially with the oil prices going down, socially, politically, you name it. And here, Iran faces up to the entire international community, defying it, challenging it, and they are the ones who are violating all the international laws and all the treaties. So instead of making a simple demand, before we negotiate with you, stop the violation, the whole negotiation was on par, very tender, like walking on eggs, trying to maintain and keep Iran's pride, and not to let them walk out of the negotiations as if they are the ones who have the choice. They do not have a choice. The only two times Iran voluntarily, on their own accord, acquiesced and actually compromised was when there was a credible threat facing them. The first one was 2003, when they voluntarily suspended, and the second time was when they came to the negotiating table.
I want to ask you real quick, because we're running out of time here soon, but you know, as a former ambassador from Israel, how is Israel responding to this? We have about 15 seconds to respond.
Well, we're very dismayed. We're very disappointed, and we understand that we will have to always rely on ourselves, on our security. And we are very fortunate, this generation, that the Jewish people today have the capabilities in Israel to defend themselves by themselves, and we will have to make our own calculations.
And there is so much to this story, so many different consequences perhaps of this deal that we're going to ask Danny to stay with us. Larry will continue to weigh in from L.A. Just what will transpire? Will America move forward with this deal with Iran? We'll talk more about it as America's Forum continues here from Newsmax TV.
If we can reach an agreement in which Iran will commit to resolving the international community's concerns about their nuclear program in a verifiable way, that we can de-escalate the tension around that issue. Now, there continue to be issues that exist with Iran, or tension that exists with Iran in other areas, but this would be an important accomplishment and a good thing for U.S. national security. It also would be good for the national security of our strongest ally in the region, Israel.
Presidential Press Secretary Josh Earnest talking about that possible agreement between the United States and Iran over nuclear access. But really, is it in the best interest of Israel? Let's continue our conversation with Danny Ayalon, the Israeli diplomat. I think it's fair to say warning bells are echoing across Israel about this potential deal. Danny's on the phone from New York City via Skype from Newsmax LA. It's our good friend Larry Elder. So, Danny, when you hear the presidential press secretary say that this is going to be in the best interest of Israel, is that a flabbergasting statement?
Well, it's very disconcerting because I think that we should be given the respect that we know best how to defend ourselves and what are our strategic and national security interests. So for anyone to say I'm doing some things in the best interest of Israel, I'm beginning to really be very cautious.
You said a couple of times that Israel may have to do it on her own or go her own way or something to that effect. Am I reading between the lines, Danny? Are you suggesting that possibly Israel, in the wake of what you perceive to be Iranians, this bad deal, are you suggesting that Israel may, in fact, take some sort of military action?
Well, I would say certainly all options should be on the table, and then we will have, of course, to come back and to the drawing board and think strategically. We really hope that political negotiations will be the answer. Everybody wants to avoid any type of violence, but the fact that Iran, in a material way, breached all the agreements, and then they get a bonus for that, what does that mean for the entire international regime? Why should they be able to retain 6,500 centrifuges and all the other law-abiding countries in the world would not? I think it's really a very dangerous deal.
About 3 minutes remain, and I guess there's a situation here where, Danny, this underscores the importance of Prime Minister Netanyahu's address to a joint session of Congress. The timing on this all seems to be coming to a head, does it not?
Yes, and right. It seems like we are here approaching the perfect storm. I would have liked, actually, the Prime Minister, if he would bring with him representatives from other parties in Israel. I think that would neutralize the point that the White House makes about a political ploy here.
When President Obama ran in 2008, he promised that there would never be a nuclear-armed Iran. That was off the table, unacceptable. Do you believe that he was dishonest, or do you believe that he's changed his mind and he believes that we can peacefully coexist with a nuclear-armed Iran?
Well, I cannot really read the policies or the thinking or the ideology of the president. I think that's for him to answer. But if we assess the actions, not the words, the actions, and we judge the results, I would say the test, if we test the situation by the results today, I think it's very bad.
In the minute and a half that remains, Danny, I want to switch topics. You're joining us from New York. It was in a New York courtroom where 2 Palestinian groups were ordered to make payments, as yesterday a U.S. jury found the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and the Palestinian Authority liable for attacks in Israel that happened between 2002 and 2004. I understand the order is that those 2 Palestinian groups will have to pay $218.5 million in damages to the affected families. Will this ruling have standing involving Israel and the PLO from your interpretation of the law, Danny?
Absolutely, and I think it's not a coincidence that the greatest country in the world with the rule of law and democratic culture, the United States, is the one that is also taking this action here in an American jury in New York. I think this is the only way to fight and preempt terrorism, because not only it deters them for the future, I think also it brings justice to the people, and I think this is something that I hope many countries and courts will follow. This is the only way to fight terrorism. Is first of all to preempt on the ground, but also so they know that there is justice, that they will be called, they will be taxed, and they will be ruined financially.
Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, joining us today from New York via telephone. Danny, we thank you for your time. Larry Elder, way out west, will be back with me. When we come back, we'll talk about African Americans possibly returning to the party of Lincoln. Stay tuned.